Jenni Calma with Paper Cardinal. I am here with a scrapbook layout for Tonic Studios, and we're just going to jump right in with the products I'm going to use. I have lots of the Nuvo Shimmer powders, and I really have not played with those before, so I'm going to just have lots of fun experimenting with that. I've also got a stencil here from the Crafter's Workshop that's just lots of different size hearts, and what I planned on doing is to use them on a piece of paper, a piece of white cardstock with a the embossing ink, and to actually emboss a white embossing powder over the stencil and then use that as a resist for the shimmer powders. So I've got a lot of the fun new products I've just been given. This is the fine detail Glacier white embossing powder that I'm going to use, and one of the neat little sponge applicators. So what I'm going to do to start off is to take some clear gesso. I'm going to try to set all this up and put it aside. So what I really wanted to do was to use these colors to make kind of a pastel-ish background, something colorful, because I have a black and white photograph that I want to use. So I thought it would be nice to have a very vibrant background, and to use that with the stencil sort of as a pattern in the background, almost making my own pattern paper. I thought I might use that glimmer paste, but I ended up not using it. This is the photograph of my daughter and our puppy, who's a 1-year-old now. And so that's why I thought that the colors would look really great with it. I've got a couple other little embellishments that are some of my favorites. And I am going to pull out some other papers and things. So let's just get started and see where we go from here. First, I'm going to get this clear gesso. It's a matte finish from the Crafter's Workshop, and I'm going to use a just an old gift card from Amazon to and I actually used the smoother side of the cardstock. It's a textured cardstock from American Crafts, so I used the smoother side, and I'm going to use this gift card to spread a very thin layer of the gesso over it and let it dry. I needed to do that because I knew I was going to add a bunch of water, and I didn't want the paper to warp any more than it would be. So after I spread that layer on, and it is very thin, I used my heat tool to dry it. And once it's dried completely, it's really not that warped from the gesso, which does help in the end. And I pulled out some of these papers from, this is a really old Dear Lizzie paper pack. I think it's Serendipity is the name of the collection. I recently went through my craft room and did a huge, massive clean out and only kept some of my favorite things. And I really haven't updated a lot of stuff. I've been kind of on a trying to keep myself from buying things while I clean out. So I've got a lot of older products that I'm trying to kind of use up a little bit. So these are all papers from that collection. And some of those are like cut apart kind of pieces that I decided to use for journaling. So once I kind of have the idea that I'm going to use the cluster of the photograph and those journaling elements in the middle of the page, that kind of gives me an idea of where I'm going to put the color. I taped down the stencil on top of my cardstock with just some masking tape, and I used it on top of the Easy Clean matte from Tonic. And once I had it taped down, and I forgot I really needed to use some powder to really just help prevent any other sticking from anything else. So I used that powder tool. Now I'm going to use this sponge applicator that's also from Nuvo with the this Nuvo embossing ink. And what's really great about this was that it really because the sponge is very contoured, and it's kind of like, you know, a makeup sponge, because it's contoured and it's got a lot of different sort of curves and everything, it really got into the space really well with this, instead of using it like just direct to the paper with an ink pad the way I probably would have done, or maybe with a dauber. I thought it was a lot better because of the shape of the sponge, so that's definitely a plus. So once I get all that on, I literally used the entire bottle of the it's the Embossing Fine Detail in Glacier White from Nuvo, and then I pour into a coffee filter, and then I poured all of it back into the bottle. And I mean, you hardly use any, so I did have to use that whole bottle. I really didn't have to emboss this entire area because I knew a lot of this would be taken up with the photograph, but I thought maybe I might end up moving that, or just because I'm a little bit type A like that, I decided to go ahead and do the whole thing. So I also heat embossed on the back, or heat set with my heat tool on the back of it to help kind of prevent that warpage. And even more so when I adhere it down to the paper I decide to put it on. I had planned to use that sort of herringbone wood grain paper, but I really like the contrast of this navy or the blue, also because our doggy seems blue. So I'm kind of trying to lay out exactly how I think that might work. And that's when I decide that I am going to use the blue. So I trimmed down the paper that's embossed, the white cardstock, by about 1/2 inch on each side, using the Tim Holtz Tonic Guillotine trimmer. And it has this amazing little arm that comes out with a little sort of kickstand on it. And it cuts a very sharp line. So once I had that all trimmed up and decided to use the navy, then I started in with the embossing powder. I'd never used this medium before, so I really was looking forward to just playing with it. I started by actually wetting the paper first a tiny bit, and then just put teeny tiny little shakes of the powder on. I'd read not to squeeze it because it would just literally come out in a giant burst. The thing I would do differently is to not mix it around so much, because I didn't, some of the colors kind of made it a little bit muddy, and I really wanted it to be fresh and clean and these sort of brighter pastelish colors. So I go through this for a long time. In fact, so long that I'm probably going to not be able to talk through it all. But quickly, the main colors I used are the Atlantis Burst, Green Parade, which is green, Catherine Wheel, which is a little bit more red there, and then that little bit of, it almost looks kind of navy or purple on there, but it's called Storm Cloud. It's a gray. The Solar Flare is yellow, and the pink is Cherry Bomb, which I came back in sort of at the end and used more of. And I literally go over this and over this and over this. It's kind of like watercolors to me. I love the effect that watercolors have by letting them do their own thing and being able to puddle up and then add another layer. And so I dried some things off in between. I dabbed some things up with my paper towel. I let some things get kind of muddled, and then kind of started over a bit. So as you can see, the hearts behind it are just really doing that resist pattern I wanted to do to kind of keep those hearts in the background and make this kind of like a watercolored wash patterned paper in itself. So I'm going to continue on with this and really just add layer on layer on layer. And even though it seems a bit tedious, and I did spend a lot of time on it, it was a really therapeutic and really enjoyable and really just a fun way to create a background, something I had never done before. So that's always fun to experiment, and I love the way it turned out. So I'm going to let you listen to a little bit of music while I let that dry and keep going, and I will be back in just a minute to talk more about the rest of it. Alrighty, I'm back here at the end. I'm just going to write a quick little note there on the journaling tag that was part of a cut-a-piece of pattern paper. I used lots of old pieces like that and things that I had saved. I have been saving that gold puffy fabric heart from Maggie Holmes forever, and I'm glad it finally found a place to live. So I'm just going to add a couple other little things here to the end. And this whole fiddling part where I just, go around and try to find the perfect place for things, to me is one of my favorite parts. So anyway, that's how it turned out. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. Thanks so much for stopping by. You can see the close-ups here in a minute, and then the final page. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And there are a couple other videos if you'd like to see more. Please leave some feedback too if you get a chance, or have any questions or comments. I will try to answer them. I'm really working hard on my studio space and some lighting that doesn't provide a glare. So I promise I'm trying to get better at that, and hopefully we will get that taken care of soon. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye.